The night smelled of smoke and rain. The city was asleep, but somewhere between the glimmering glass towers and the cracked pavements beneath them, destiny was about to stir. On a cold, forgotten street corner, beneath a flickering streetlight, a woman sat huddled beneath an old, torn blanket. Her name was Maria. To the world, she was just another homeless soul, another shadow among the thousands who had no place to call home. But tonight, the darkness that had swallowed her for years was about to break open, with fire, fear, and an act of unthinkable courage. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of a single act of courage, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps spread stories that remind us of the goodness that still lives within the human heart. The street was quiet except for the soft patter of rain dripping from the edges of old rooftops. Maria's thin hands trembled as she held her cardboard cup close, hoping a few coins might fall in by morning. Her clothes were soaked, her shoes torn, and her eyes, those tired, hollow eyes, had long lost the shine of hope. Once upon a time, she had been a nurse. Once she had a home, a husband, a daughter. But life had unraveled cruelly. Her husband's accident, her daughter's illness, and the bills that crushed her until she lost everything. Now her only companion was the memory of a little girl's laughter that still echoed faintly in her heart. As the city slept, a sudden sound pierced the night. A scream, sharp, terrified, and coming from the building across the street. Maria lifted her head, startled. Smoke was curling up from a second-floor window. She squinted through the fog of rain and firelight, and then she saw it, a small child, barely 6 years old, pounding on the glass, crying for help. For a second, Maria froze. Fear and disbelief gripped her heart. People were gathering, shouting, calling for help, but no one moved. Closer. The flames were spreading fast, licking through the curtains, turning the window into a furnace of orange light. The child's cries grew weaker. Something inside Maria broke, something deep and maternal that had been silent for years. Without thinking, she dropped her cup, ran across the street, and threw herself into the storm of heat and smoke. The door was locked, but Maria didn't stop. She picked up a nearby brick and smashed the glass, forcing her way in. The smoke was thick, the air impossible to breathe, but she covered her mouth with her sleeve and pushed forward, calling out to the child. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred, yet she climbed the narrow staircase that trembled under the fire's weight. Every step felt like a battle between life and death, but she wouldn't stop, not when a child's voice was still calling for help. She found the boy curled near the window, coughing violently, his little hands reaching out. Maria wrapped her arms around him, shielding him from the flames, whispering broken words of comfort. Then, with every ounce of strength left in her frail body, she made her way back down. The stairs were collapsing, the walls groaning as the fire devoured the building. Just as she reached the door, a beam fell, striking her shoulder. Pain ripped through her, but she didn't let go of the child. She pushed through the smoke, stumbled onto the street, and fell to her knees, cradling the boy tightly. People rushed forward, pulling the child from her arms, clapping, shouting, recording with their phones. Maria's vision spun, her hands were burned, her face smeared with ash, and her chest heaved with ragged breaths. The boy's mother screamed in relief, hugging her son, crying into his hair. The fire trucks arrived, their sirens slicing through the night, but Maria barely heard them. She slumped against the sidewalk, coughing, as the world blurred into a haze of orange light and human noise. Minutes passed. Then a black car pulled up, its headlights cutting through the chaos. From it stepped a tall man in a dark coat, his face sharp and composed. But when he saw the child in the mother's arms, something inside him broke. He ran forward, falling to his knees beside them. It was Daniel Ross, one of the city's most powerful CEOs, a man whose name filled newspapers, whose wealth built empires. The boy was his son. As the mother told him what had happened, that a homeless woman had saved their child from the fire, Daniel turned, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Maria. She was sitting on the curb, shivering, staring blankly at her burned hands. Something about her struck him, the exhaustion, the pain, and the quiet strength in her eyes. He walked toward her, but before he could speak, the paramedics were already lifting her onto a stretcher. She tried to protest, her voice barely a whisper. "The boy, is he okay?" Daniel's throat tightened. "He's safe," he said softly, though his voice trembled. "Because of you." The ambulance drove away, leaving Daniel standing in the rain, watching the taillights disappear into the night. He had seen many kinds of bravery in his life, soldiers, businessmen, leaders, but never something like this. A woman with nothing had risked everything to save his world. Days later, Maria woke up in a hospital bed. Her burns were bandaged, her body weak, but she was alive. For the first time in years, she had slept in a clean bed. When the nurse entered with a gentle smile, she said someone wanted to see her. Maria's heart skipped. And then, through the doorway, Daniel walked in. He was holding a small teddy bear, the one his son had refused to sleep without since the fire. He sat by her bed and spoke quietly. He told her that his son Ethan was recovering well, that every night the boy asked to pray for the angel lady who saved him. Maria's eyes filled with tears. No one had called her an angel in her entire life. Daniel asked about her, about how she ended up on the streets. She hesitated at first, ashamed of her story. But his sincerity softened her guard. She told him about her husband's death, her daughter's illness, and how losing her home had stripped away her will to live. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, silence filled the room. Then he said something that changed her life forever. "You saved my son," he whispered. "The least I can do is help you rebuild yours." In the following weeks, Daniel arranged for Maria's medical care, found her a small apartment, and even helped her reconnect with a local hospital where she could work again as a nurse. The news spread like wildfire. Homeless woman saved CEO's child. But Maria never sought fame. She shied away from cameras, from interviews, from attention. All she wanted was peace, a chance to start over quietly. Yet what she didn't know was that her story was changing hearts across the city. Strangers began leaving flowers and thank you notes at the spot where she had once sat with her cardboard cup. Donations poured in to local shelters in her name. People began to look at the homeless not as invisible shadows but as human beings with stories, pain, and courage. Months passed, and Maria began to heal. She worked part-time at the hospital, helping children recover from injuries and illness. The first time she held a child's hand again, she broke down in tears. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. She had thought her purpose was gone, but that night of fire had rekindled it. One day, Daniel visited her again, this time with Ethan. The little boy ran to her with a bright smile and hugged her tightly. "You saved me," he said softly. Maria smiled, her eyes glistening. "You saved me too," she whispered. Daniel invited her to attend a charity gala his company was hosting, a fundraiser for the homeless and single mothers. At first she refused. She didn't feel she belonged among people dressed in silk and diamonds. But Daniel insisted, telling her that she was the reason the event even existed. So, reluctantly, she agreed. That evening, as she walked into the glittering hall in a simple dress the hospital staff had bought for her, people turned to look. Some recognized her from the news. Others didn't know her at all. But when Daniel took the stage and told her story, how a woman with nothing had risked her life to save his son, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Maria stood there, trembling as applause filled the hall. She wasn't used to being seen, to being celebrated. All she had ever wanted was to survive, but now she was being honored for something more, for her humanity, her courage, and her heart. Daniel's company launched a foundation in her name, the Maria Hope Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless women find shelter, work, and dignity. Maria became part of it, not as a symbol, but as a voice. She spent her days visiting shelters, listening to the stories of others, helping them believe that their lives could change too. Every now and then, she would walk past the street where it all began, the place she once slept, the corner where she had run into the fire. She would pause there, close her eyes, and whisper a quiet prayer of thanks. The city lights didn't seem so cold anymore. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us continue to bring you real, powerful stories that remind the world that kindness still exists, even in the darkest corners. And before we end, I want to ask you something from the heart. If you believe every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change a life, comment below with hope still lives. Because sometimes the people who seem to have lost everything are the ones who still carry the greatest light within them.